What's up, guys, and welcome to Gamescript. Looking at the Washington Commanders versus the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a game that people are projecting to be a shootout, and I'm going to tell you why when we build our DraftKings Showdown lineups, why it might be more profitable to project it as not a shootout. And I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. Going to be breaking down the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders for Thursday night football. It's got a 48.5-point total with Philadelphia as 3.5-point favorites at home. And this is a divisional game on Thursday night football. A lot of people are projecting this to be a shootout. It's going to be about 39 degrees in Philadelphia, and I believe there's going to be scattered showers throughout the game. So it should be an interesting game. I'm going to dig into why it might not be the shootout that people are expecting. And before I do that, make sure to hit the like button. I'm looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video closer to lock, or at least leave in the comments section my 4 favorite picks. Sometimes I don't have time with my day job to produce a 30, like a minute long video. So make sure to check the comment section if you don't see one of those videos pop up, or check on TikTok, because sometimes it takes a while for those videos to upload on YouTube. Also, make sure to hit the subscribe button. You're going to want to be subscribed for when those short videos come out. You'll get the alerts if you sign up for alerts, but you got to subscribe to do that. Also, I'm trying to hit 1,200 subscribers by the end of week 11, and I'm at I need about 50 more to get there, so help me out there. And let's dig into this matchup. As I mentioned, I'm doing DraftKings Showdown for this. Going to break down the player pool and figure out which guys will be the best players to target in this matchup. And one thing to keep in mind, a lot of the field is probably going to be playing this like a shootout, and it might not necessarily be a shootout. It's got a 48.5-point total, but these are two defenses that have been playing much better, like in the latter half of this season so far. Philadelphia, if you guys remember, they signed Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator. I've been talking about it, mentioned it early on in the season. It takes a while for these defenses under Vic Fangio to figure out the defense. It's a complicated defense. But since we've come out of the bye, Philadelphia has been a much, much stronger defense. And they're, where they used to be, maybe a defense that we would target. Now they are a defense to avoid. And Washington has come around too. Washington's been really good. If you keep in mind with Washington, Dan Quinn is their new head coach, obviously, and Dan Quinn is a defensive-minded coach. He ran a lot of good defense over there in Dallas before being signed by Washington, and it's been showing up in their defense recently. They've been really good against the passing game in particular. They've been a run funnel defense. Philadelphia's just been solid all around. They've been solid against the run. They've been solid against the pass. So there really hasn't been any weaknesses recently in Philadelphia's defense. Just to give you an idea of some of the opponents, though, that Philadelphia has faced since their bye week. They faced the Cowboys, which are awful. They faced the Jaguars, which have been struggling, but the Jaguars were able to keep that game relatively close. I think that's more of a head coach thing than anything else with some of the decision making. The Eagles did play the Bengals, and they were able to hold the Bengals to 17 points in week 8. That's a big deal, especially the way that Cincinnati's been playing. They held the Giants to 3 points. The Giants, they're just a horrible team. They held the Browns to 16 points. That was with Deshaun Watson as the quarterback. And those are the opponents that they've faced since their bye week. So they've been really good. at defending against these weaker teams, and now they get a strong opponent in the Washington Commanders. Washington Commanders have been a little bit sluggish in the recent weeks. They got off to a hot start. Some of the recent weeks, though, they lost to Pittsburgh last week, 28-27. Jayden Daniels, we only saw 9 DraftKings points in that game. They kept it close against the Giants. It was 27-22. Divisional game there. Jayden Daniels scored under 20 DraftKings points in that one. They barely beat the Chicago Bears. They beat the Chicago Bears on a last-minute Hail Mary catch by Noah Brown, and they won that game only 18-15. Chicago Bears, one of the top pass defenses in the league, and Jayden Daniels had 25 DraftKings points against them, but if you take away that Hail Mary, that would be under 20 DraftKings points in that game as well. And then against the Carolina Panthers, they destroyed the Panthers, but Jayden Daniels went out early in that one with a injury. So lately they've been a good team. They've been winning some games, but a lot of those games have come down to the final plays of the game, or they've been really tight games. So keep that in mind with the Commanders. And now they face off against division opponent, the Eagles, and there are some important things to note with this matchup in particular. With Cynthia Freeland pointed out in her video this week that this is a key one, I think. Washington uses pre-snap motion at the 4th lowest rate in the league, and the Eagles' defense has been the 4th best at defending offenses not using pre-snap motion. So that's a key thing right there. The Commanders, also from Cynthia Freeland, use empty formation at the 3rd highest rate in the league, and Philly is the 6th best success rate at defending empty formation. So those two right there are important, as in addition to how Philly's defense has been playing in general recently. Rich Rebar also pointed out some little factoids on this defensive offensive matchup. Let's see, what were those points? Washington allows a league high 3.32 points per drive on the road compared to 1.47 per drive at home. So that defensive improvement that we've seen from Washington might not be relevant when they're on the road here against Philly. So that's a Rich Rebar nugget there. And the Eagles have allowed a league low 0.93 points per drive since their week 5 bye. That is hand in hand with what I spoke about earlier about how the Eagles have been performing since their bye week. So, like some important notes there on this matchup and why the Washington side might be limited in this one, and which might lower the chances of this one shooting out if Washington can't figure it out. I think we want to be paying close attention to ownership as we get closer to lock and figure out how people are going to be playing this. I'm recording this on the ass crack of dawn on Thursday morning, so I haven't gotten any idea on where ownership really stands yet, and I don't know where that's going to be shaking out. But I think that it's going to be a lot of people playing this like it's going to be a shootout, and I think that we can get different from the field if we don't play it out that way. I do think that there are going to be some important decision points with the Hurts-Barkley situation. Hurts and Barkley, basically, it's going to depend on if when Barkley is rushing against Washington's defense, who has been weaker against the rush than they have against the pass, if Barkley is able to complete his runs and not get tackled at the 1-yard line, that is going to be the differentiator in this game. He's been tackled at the 1-yard line, I believe, on about 10 times so far this season. And when that happens, Jalen Hurts swoops in there and he vultures our touchdowns. And that's 10 times where Barkley was stopped from getting a touchdown. Jalen Hurts has come in about half of those, or maybe about a third of those, and swooped in and took those touchdowns. So if we see more ownership on Hurts in the captain than Barkley, then we want to go with Barkley. We're going to assume that Barkley is going to be able to complete those runs and score the touchdowns. If we see Barkley in the captain, higher percentage than Hurts, then we want to go in the opposite direction. We want to assume that Hurts is going to get those rushing touchdowns. So it's very simple there. People may look at Barkley not scoring touchdowns and being up and down, but they don't understand the context. The game last week is a perfect example. Barkley got stopped at the 1 yard line at least once in that game, and Hurts swooped in and took the touchdown. Like, it was a 8.8 performance week out of Saquon Barkley, and people paid a lot of money for Barkley and got burned by him losing those touchdowns. People were getting frustrated, throwing their hands up with Barkley, losing these touchdowns to Hurts, but you can see what happens when he converts on those touchdowns. 36.9 points against Jacksonville, 29.7 against New York, 36.6 against New Orleans, and 36 versus Green Bay. He's capable of putting up a 30-point game here versus Washington if he is able to complete those touchdowns. So keep that in mind with Barkley. We're keeping a close tab on his ownership in the captain. Now, if both these guys are going to be highly owned in the captain, and we see an ownership discount on A.J. Brown, then Brown is going to be a guy that we were going to want to consider as the captain in this one. Brown has, the best matchup. He is facing off against a rookie corner. What's his face? Get an idea of who he's facing off against. Maybe not a rookie quarter, but his matchups are excellent against St. Juice and Igho Nobani. I pronounced that horribly, but those are the types of matchups that A.J. Brown's facing. But A.J. Brown is the most highly targeted guy against man coverage on this team, and Washington is giving up big plays at a high clip. So that's going to set up A.J. Brown to be in a good matchup. So if Barkley and Hurts are going to be too highly owned in the captain, then we want to consider A.J. Brown, depending on his ownership. If he's much lower owned, if we can get him sub 10%, then A.J. Brown is going to be a good captain option. So that's kind of a layout of the Eagles' top guys. Let's take a look at Washington here. Jayden Daniels. Mentioned it at the top here. He's been a little bit sluggish with his DraftKings points. Teams might be figuring him out a little bit. He's very hyped up though. That's good for us if he's going to be hyped up and the ownership is going to follow suit, and he's facing off against his difficult matchup. 8.5 DraftKings points versus Pittsburgh. He had 19.86 against a weak New York team. He had 25 against Chicago, but keep in mind, at least probably about 7 or 8 of those points came off that very last play of the game with that Hail Mary. And then he had 5 when he got hurt against Carolina, 20 in the 2 games prior to that. And he's at 15,600, at least in the captain. Let's get an idea what his flex salary is. Jayden Daniels is 10.4 for his salary in this one. So he's only 200 less than Barkley, who I think has a clearer path to upside in this matchup. So Terry McLaurin is in a good spot. Terry McLaurin, get an idea of what he's facing here. I think he's the one I was thinking of who's facing. Yeah, he's facing rookie Quinlan Mitchell in this game. So Terry McLaurin is going to have a decent matchup in this, a decent potential to beat that coverage. He has been on fire. He scored at least 18 points in over half of his games so far at $9K for his salary. That's a pretty good clip. So Terry McLaurin, has a good chance of being in the optimal this week. And he might be the expensive Commanders guy that we consider. He also has that difficult matchup, though. So, it's not going to kill us to leave him out of our lineups if we notice that he has high ownership. One of the key things with Brown, too, is that Marshawn Lattimore has been ruled out. So keep that in mind with A.J. Brown. We don't have to worry about Marshawn Lattimore, who the Commanders recently traded for. He's not going to be in this game. Devonta Smith has not done so well this year. He's gotten like a 15% target share with A.J. Brown on the field, and now Dallas Goedert is back. Devonta Smith has been playing in the slot a lot this year, and the Washington defense has been able to get a lot of pressure on quarterbacks, and Hurts does not perform well under pressure. It's his big weak spot. And, maybe we see some of these dump offs to Devonta Smith and to Dallas Goedert in this game. So Devonta Smith, despite not really doing too much, well, no, he had two good games in the last four, but in the last four, he's either been boom or bust. He's been 18.7 and 20.5, or he's been 3.4 and 0.8 DraftKings points. So keep that in mind with Devonta Smith. But he's been generally solid this year, but he just has not gotten the target share that we would want him to get when A.J. Brown's in the lineup. But even with that, Jalen Hurts has been pretty efficient. So Devonta's been putting up Smith's points despite that. Brian Robinson is in this week, but he's in a difficult matchup against this Philly run defense. So Robinson's going to be a tough start this week, especially in a game if you're projecting Philly to maybe play with a lead in this one. And Robinson is coming off of a hamstring injury, and we never like to see that with any players that we need to have significant running from, like any wide receivers or running backs. Let's see. So we got Ekeler. Ekeler might take advantage of that. If Ekeler is going to be a good playing from behind, if we're looking at Washington playing from behind, Ekeler is going to play a role in that. He's the primary pass catching back. In the 2 weeks that he was filling in for Brian Robinson these past couple weeks, he scored over 17 DraftKings points. But he's had pretty mediocre weeks without that situation. But maybe with Brian Robinson a little banged up, maybe we see Ekeler get a little bit more work than normal. He is at 8K though, so that is expensive. That's an expensive angle to take on this one. Dallas Goedert is at 6,600. He's one of the more affordable upside guys on the slate. We've seen a 30-point week out of him against New Orleans already. This matchup isn't great it's not horrible. It's middling with Washington giving up 10.5 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So keep that in mind. As far as the wideouts, the past 5 weeks, Washington has been giving up 16.3 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position, and they've only been giving out 7.2 DraftKings points a game to the slot position. So Philly has been giving up 13.2 to the wideouts and 5.6 to slots. Philly's been consistent throughout the season, only giving up 7.4 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. They've only been giving up 16.7 DraftKings points a game to the running back position and 13.3 to the quarterback position, just to illustrate how good Philly's defense has been so far this season. Noah Brown is a guy that is a little interesting too. If we can't get Terry McLaurin in our lineups, I think the fallback guy is Noah Brown here because I don't think that Robinson is in play unless you want to play it contrarian because Robinson might have low ownership. If Robinson has low ownership, then I can endorse those angles where maybe Washington plays from a lead and Robinson is the primary beneficiary there and gets in a captain spot. If we see Robinson under like 6%, that would make him interesting in that captain role because he does have that upside. Noah Brown caught that Hail Mary a couple weeks ago. He's the wide receiver 2 in this offense. If Washington is playing from behind and they're forced to throw the ball at some point, then Noah Brown is going to be interesting in this one because he's become a trusted target of Jayden Daniels. 7 targets last week, 6 targets the week before that, 6 targets the week before that. Generally, Noah Brown is a great receiver. He's a good utility receiver, I should say. He's been good for the Texans in the past. He was good for the Cowboys, when he got his opportunities, and now he is with the Commanders, and he's been forming a decent connection with Jayden Daniels. Zach Ertz, revenge game. The Eagles have been good against the tight end, though. Let's see. They haven't faced each other yet this year. Zach Ertz has been getting targeted by Jayden Daniels. He just hasn't really done too much with it. He's at 5,600 though. We saw 8 targets last week against Philly or against Pittsburgh. We saw 11 targets against Chicago a few weeks before that. He had 14.7 DraftKings points when he got all those targets, and he only had 7.1 with those 8 targets last week. Zach Ertz going to be a tough guy to pull the trigger on against this tough Philly defense that's only given up 7.4 DraftKings points to the tight end position. I think both kickers are going to be in play, despite the weather concerns playing outdoors. This could be one where the defenses are able to stop the offenses as they get into scoring range. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see at least one of these kickers in the optimal lineup this week. We've seen Jake Elliott have a few weeks in double-digit scoring. He had that 15-point week against Cincy a couple weeks ago. And Zane Gonzalez, I think he's only started one game. He only started last week. He had 11 DraftKings points last week. He's taken over for Siebert. Get an idea what Siebert was doing before. Look at these monster totals for Siebert. 22 DraftKings points, 11, 10, 15 DraftKings points, 17 DraftKings points, 13 DraftKings points. This is a team that kicks a ton of field goals. So keep that in mind with this difficult defense. If people are looking at Zane Gonzalez and maybe thinking you might be a little hesitant to start him, Zane Gonzalez, with Washington kicking all these field goals this year, tells me that they're stalling out in the red zone or they haven't been able to necessarily complete on these touchdowns. And Philly's a good defense. Zane Gonzalez is going to be thoroughly in play this week. As far as the Eagles D, I think the Eagles D are in play. They've been playing much better recently. 20 DraftKings points last week. They had 15 against New York a couple weeks back. Dallas, obviously, terrible team. They got that 20 points against. As far as good teams, they got 6 points against Cincy. Maybe not so much in play at 4,400, but like if you want to use one of those game scripts where Philly's able to hold back Washington and prevent the shootout in this one, then the Eagles defense, I think, will be a good team. You got Vic Fangio. You got a rookie. As much accolades as Jayden Daniels has got, he's a rookie, and he's up against Vic Fangio, like a guru of defense. So we'll see how that one plays out, but just something to consider with the Eagles defense. Jahan Dotson, he's going to be the odd man out now that Goedert's back. I generally don't want any of these pass catchers when we're talking about like all of the main weapons in the game for Philadelphia. Like even Devonta Smith is getting like limited to like sub 20% targets. Like the odds of Jahan Dotson getting more than one or two opportunities in a game is very, very bad. He only got one target last week, one target the week before that. Like 3 of the last 4 weeks, he's only got one target. He's at 4K, not paying that for one target. Commanders D, they will also be in play just the way that they are able to get pressure on the quarterback, and Jalen Hurts' susceptibility to pressure. And if we want to play it like it's not going to be a shootout, Commander, like both defenses will be in play in that situation. Zacchaeus on the Washington side. Let's take a look at these snap counts, snap shares that these guys have been getting on Washington. 25% for Zacchaeus. Luke McCaffrey, 41% is interesting. 16% for Diami Brown. I think the secondary receivers, Luke McCaffrey is going to be the interesting one, and he's actually cheaper than Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is 3K. We got Luke McCaffrey down here at 1,200. Diami Brown's been getting opportunities too. I think he dropped or failed to convert on an important one last week, but he's been getting 3 targets last week. He had 3 targets a few weeks ago against Carolina. So he's been getting his opportunities. He hasn't been doing anything with them, though. Luke McCaffrey, meanwhile, 3 targets last week as well. He's about the same as Diami Brown, except he's much cheaper and he's getting a higher snap share. Rodriguez might be interesting, like as the backup for the grounded pound work for Brian Robinson. If Brian Robinson is still hindered by that hamstring, saw him get 11 carries a couple weeks ago against New York. Definitely possible that Rodriguez gets some work. My cheap guy that I like, though, would definitely lean more towards McCaffrey in this cheap range. Calcaterra, I got no interest in Calcaterra. Don't know who this guy is. With the way that these teams target their main guys the most, I don't really see too much interesting as I go further down here. So I think we can go ahead and build these lineups. I think the key for me is going to be to have 2 of Hurts, Barkley, and Brown in my lineups. If we're playing, I don't want to necessarily play Hurts and Barkley together. I think it's either Brown and Barkley or Hurts and Barkley for me. But you could get different and put Hurts and Barkley in together. So let's go ahead and put Barkley. Let's assume Barkley. People are frustrated. I don't have the captain ownership. You're going to want to pay attention closer to lock for when I put my picks out. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Looking for 1,200 in the next week or so, but also you want to do that to subscribe to sign up for alerts so that you get the notification when those videos come out. But let's put Barkley in the captain, and let's throw in AJ Brown with him. I'm going to fade the quarterbacks in this one. Assume it's less of a shootout and more like AJ Brown's getting PPR points and Barkley is converting on his touchdowns. Let's scroll down a little bit here. If I'm going this direction, let's put McLauren in this lineup as our run back. I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to put in Gonzalez, take advantage of their propensity for field goals. That leaves me with 5K per guy. If I'm looking down here, I might consider Goedert. If I had, especially if I had Hurts in the captain instead of Barkley, I'd consider Goedert here as my second receiver. It might be a double kicker game. We saw one of those the other day, but this might be a double setting up as a double kicker game. Let's put Elliott in there. It's going to leave me with 5,100. And this is where it gets interesting because there's these are two condensed offenses. So it's very difficult to pick anyone under this level. I don't see anyone that stands out as interesting because these guys, these teams, they just target those like that tight pool of guys. So it might be like an Eagles defense in addition to these two kickers. If especially if it's considering to be a low scoring game, like a defense would make a lot of sense in addition to these kickers. And nobody's going to have two kickers and a defense in their lineups. But that could be the type of game that plays out in this one, and that would distinguish us with the Barkley captains, especially if he ends up being highly owned. If we wanted to put Hurts in there, just in that same spot, so we could just swap Hurts out for Barkley. I think we get like a significant portion of the fantasy points here with Hurts, AJ Brown, McLauren. We got them all covered, and then we got Gonzalez, Elliott, and the Eagles defense. I think this makes a lot of sense with how condensed these two offenses are. If we wanted to swap back in Barkley, and if you wanted to play Jayden Daniels, and let's say you have thought that Daniels is going to perform better, then you could swap Daniels in there, and you can still put in that Eagles D. So I mean, this kind of works like always with getting three of those studs in there. Now, if we wanted to go with a cheap captain instead, maybe you think that it's going to be a different way that the game plays out. First, let's try it. Let's try it with Brown in the captain. Let's put Brown in the captain. Let's put Barkley in there because people are going to want to play Hurts. Let's say Brown's getting PPR points and he scores a long touchdown, but Barkley scores a couple touchdowns in this one, which is enough to keep Hurts out of the lineup. Let's get Daniels in there too. I think that'll differentiate with having Daniels stacked with Brown instead of Hurts. And let's go down and get, where's he at? Let's get McLauren in there. Let's leave this with 2,500. Let's get McCaffrey in there. This is with 3,800 left. We can get the Washington Commanders defense in there. If I was forced to pick one of these guys, I might go with Zacchaeus or McNichols. Let's see what McNichols has done. 4 attempts, 8 attempts. I mean, he might at least get a goal line carry. Rodriguez. I mean, it'll be a tough choice between those two guys. They're both kind of scrubby. Johnny Wilson scored a touchdown last week, but that was his only target. Like these guys just don't get any work. Let's see Bates. Bates hasn't done anything either. Very tough at these low levels. I think the cheapest guy worth putting in is going to be these defenses, honestly. And 3,600 is cheap for a Commander's defense, especially if we're not going to be playing it as a shootout. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult to go in that direction. So I just prefer to keep Daniels out. And if I do that, that leaves me with 7K per guy. If I do that, then I can get maybe I swap out Barkley for Hurts and I get Goedert in there. Leaves me with 7,200. I can get Brown in there in that situation. Lots more that you can do by leaving Jayden Daniels out if you're projecting Daniels to have higher ownership. If we get high Jayden Daniels ownership or low Jayden Daniels ownership in the captain, if maybe people are on to how he's been struggling recently, at least struggling under the surface, not on paper. Let's put Daniels in the captain, and let's give him McLauren, and let's throw Brown in there. So Daniels to McLauren and Brown. You don't necessarily have to stack Daniels with two guys, but let's just stack him with two guys. Let's say Barkley's getting all the touchdowns on the Eagles side. And let's put the Eagles D in this one, because this might be one of those classic stack the captain quarterback with the opposing defense. Actually, you know what? Let's get Zane Gonzalez in there instead. Leaves us with 3,800. Commanders D. That's what that puts us in. If you wanted to put Jake Elliott, I think actually would make more sense in this one, because Jake Elliott and Saquon Barkley would be getting all the red zone conversions here for the Eagles. And meanwhile, the Commanders are playing from behind. In this situation, there's just not enough volume or upside for stacking three Washington receivers with him in the captain. So I might look towards like a guy like Johnny Wilson or Kenny Gainwell. You're basically burning your money at that point. It'd be tough to stack. Okay, let's put McCaffrey in there, and let's take Brown out. It leaves us with 8,400. Like that situation, you could put in Goedert maybe and leave money on the table. You could put in Brian Robinson in that situation. Let's put in Brian Robinson. Leaves us with 200. I mean, you got McCaffrey in there. If you wanted to at that point, well, it's Daniels with two receivers. But if I have Daniels with two receivers, I don't want his running back in there. Let's take McCaffrey out there. If we put Devonta Smith in there, doesn't leave us in a good spot. Let's take Smith out. Let's put Goedert back in there. See where that leaves us if we take that direction. Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus wouldn't be a horrible second stacking option for Daniels, or you could go down to McCaffrey. Like I said, that gives him two guys to stack with. But give some options there. If we want to go with a cheaper captain, let's go with Goedert. I think Goedert would probably be the better of these cheap captains. If you're considering Goedert and Brown, I think those are the two guys in this 6K range that are realistic, have opportunity to be the captains in this one. So let's put Goedert in the captain. Let's give him. I'm going to give him Barkley. And I want to get. No, let's give him Hurts. Let's give him Hurts. And let's put Brown in there too. Got my two out of the three guys there with Hurts and Brown. Leaves me with 6,300 per guy. I want to get McLauren in there. It's my run back. Let's move with 5K per guy. We can go back and get Gonzalez in there again. Leaves me with 5,300. I got an option of Elliott there. I got an option of the Eagles D. Commanders D. I just don't like any of these other guys. I don't like the I prefer the kickers and the defenses over any of these scrubby guys, because these scrubby guys just don't get any volume. So the volume is all top heavy in this one. Something to keep in mind. And I think, multiple of, a kicker and a defense, two kickers and a defense. I think all that kind of makes sense in this matchup. the way that the salaries are playing out here, and the builds are being constructed. So I'm going to give my thoughts closer to lock. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, give me the 30 likes so I put out that information closer to lock. Most likely in a short video, but if it's not, if I don't have time to get it out, make sure to check the comment section of this video, and I'll put it in the comment section like I had to this past Monday. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later on.